Migration can occur in several different ways. In this lecture, we will examine the general patterns of internal and international migration. This is important to geographers to get a better understanding of why people move and where. The first pattern is internal migration, which is the most common type of migration. Internal migration occurs when people move within a country from one county, state, or region to another and falls into two categories: migration from rural locations and migration from urban locations. The three main factors that determine an internal move are age, employment, and natural or environmental amenities. Rural out migration refers to people moving from rural to rural settings and rural to urban settings. Rural to rural migration is the most common pattern in developing countries. Rural to urban migration is not that uncommon either. Both migration patterns are mainly for economic reasons. The photo on the top is an important agricultural area known for its flat land in Nepal's Taral region. This region has been a major destination of people from other rural areas, especially from the mountains where farming is less lucrative. The photo at the bottom shows the indigenous Aymara women supporting their iconic bowler hats selling their goods on the street of La Paz, Bolivia. The Aymara, once predominantly rural, now increasingly live in Bolivia's cities. Urban outmigration consists of urban to urban moves, which may include moving into suburbs, and urban to rural migration, which is sometimes called counter-urbanization, especially in developed countries. In developed countries, the flow of city dwellers to suburbs and rural destinations tend to involve lifestyle preferences. The photo on the right shows suburban growth around Melbourne, Australia, and the chart on the left shows the relative magnitude of movement out of cities and into suburbs, and the fact that suburbanization in the U.S. has been the dominant trend. Where net migration into non-metropolitan areas was positive during the early 1990s, counter-urbanization was underway. International migration occurs when people cross international boundaries and take up residence in another country. Migration occurs on a global scale when people migrate across an ocean. This type of international migration is a relatively recent phenomena that has grown in conjunction with European colonization and globalization. To facilitate comparisons among countries, the map shows the rate of net migration. Overall, these rates are low worldwide, indicating that few countries have serious immigration or emigration imbalances. This map shows generalized migration flows between countries, not the exact routes of travel. About 15% of all international migrants in 2010 moved via these 10 corridors. Please pause the video and study the map. No questions are to be answered, but examine the routes from source to destination. On the next slide, reasons for some of these specific corridors will be addressed. Migration corridors basically came about due to several reasons. One, in the 1970s, migrant workers from Turkey received temporary visas to work in Germany. These migrants were considered guest workers. However, once their employment ended, many remained and they brought family and other members of their community or town to join them, creating a migration chain. Two, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979, nearly 3 million Afghans fled to Iran as refugees, people who flee to another country out of the concern for personal safety or to avoid persecution. Iran then became an asylum for Afghans, which was protection from persecution granted by one country to a refugee from another country. And three, the war in Iraq resulted in more than 1 million internally displaced persons. These are people forcibly driven from their homes into a different part of their country. Please pause the video and answer the following. List a specific example for each of the migration patterns listed below. 1. Internal migration. 2. Rural outmigration. 3. Urban outmigration. And 4. International migration. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific with your answer.